All right, welcome to Rapid Fire Manufacturing. Today I'm with Tim Ridderbos. He's the VP of Circular Business Development at Shapiro. Tim's all about making things sustainable. It's not really just a buzzword. It's something that he actually lives each and every day. He's helping manufacturers cut waste, stay profitable, and actually lead with purpose. So, Tim, thank you so much for joining today.
Yeah, David, happy to be here. I've been watching you and seeing what you're doing on LinkedIn and everywhere else, and I'm really glad we're getting to talk today.
Absolutely. Tim, I'm super curious to know your story, how you got into manufacturing. So if you don't mind explaining that.
Yeah. I started way back in the day. I my first job was when I was 16. I got my driver's license. My dad said, "Okay, you got to go out and get a job." And what I actually did was I was a carpenter here in St. Louis. So every summer, it'd start at 6 o'clock in the morning, swinging hammers, building houses all over town. And that was kind of my first introduction to woodworking and building with your hands and seeing something that starts as a pile of lumber that ends up as a beautiful home, right? And so I did that all through high school and college. Eventually graduated college and got into finance and hated it. Like, I learned a lot. It's the best sales training you could possibly have, but it just wasn't tangible enough for me, right? Like, I just with this background of construction and growing up watching mega factories and dirty jobs and how it's made, like, I loved all that stuff. So I did finance for a little bit, but again, there was an itch that I couldn't scratch there. And every day on my way to work, I'd pass a big Caterpillar dealership here in St. Louis. And I was like, man, construction, building stuff, they're building all kinds of things. And so I just cold called the sales manager for like 6 months and bugged him until he gave me a job there. And so that was great, right? I was there as they were building a whole bunch of stuff in downtown St. Louis, and you're seeing these neighborhoods get built and all this construction. In fact, the house that I'm in right now, I was selling tractors into this neighborhood when it was a farmer's field being turned over into a neighborhood. So I was, like literally on the spot where my house is when it was just nothing but a field, trying to sell skid steers. I love that industry. I love the building. And one of my customers was Shapiro Metals. And Shapiro is a company that only works with industrial manufacturers. So again, like, what they did all day is they'd go into, how it's made, mega factories. They'd go see how rockets and planes and prosthetic knees and all kinds of different things were made. And I thought that was really cool. And so I was selling them tractors. And one day, after signing a deal for a few more, skid steers, they said, "Hey, come over and check us out. Like, come into the scrap industry, see what we're doing." And, like, there was that manufacturing component. Obviously, I liked the machines that I was selling into the company and into the industry. And I went to my first industry event and I was just taken. And, they say in this industry, when you're in the recycling industry, because the terminology's changed a lot since 2017 when I came in. Now it's the recycled materials industry. It's much more broad. And, it's really great because you get to see, again, the air conditioner on the side of your house, the bridge that you drive over, the 737, Southwest jet that you fly in, where all the little components and stuff are made. And so once you get into this industry and you see all that stuff, it's in your blood. Like, it's been an absolute ride the last 8.5 years doing this.
That's awesome. So you went from selling the skid steers, and I'm assuming, these tractors and front loaders and stuff that are picking up the scrap, loading it up, to now you're the ones that are, you're picking up the scrap essentially.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I get to see, the skid steers that I sold, at work, moving scrap out of trailers and, loading balers and doing different things. And it's always a good point of conversation whenever I go into any of the other scrap yards, because I visit a lot of other, scrap yards, recycling facilities. And, I'll see Caterpillar equipment, I'll see Centibogans, I'll see Liebherr, I'll see other stuff. And that's always good fodder for kind of talking to people about the different machines and why they like what they like. But yeah, I mean, I was at one in Chicago just last week, and it's like, they've got all the really big material handlers, the big cranes, right, with the grapples and the magnets, and they're feeding a shredder. It's turned into a 5-year-old little boy. Like, when you see all those big machines, I mean, everything's firing like it was when you were a little kid. It's just really cool stuff. So yeah, I love seeing the big machines at work.
Absolutely. I was just at a facility, Sandvik owns it. It's called Rammer in Cleveland, and they're making these huge air hammers or pneumatic hammers and hydraulic hammers, but it's incredible to see the size of these things that are going and just demolishing buildings or cutting into concrete and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
Now, what would you say is your favorite part about the industry, aside from, I guess, the just seeing all the manufacturing that goes on and the stuff like that.
Yeah. So, my favorite part of this industry is really the mission and the purpose behind it, and helping kind of, or seeing this transition from it being scrap into being recycled materials, right? So what do I mean by that? So, at the end of the day, whether you're talking about, just taking care of the planet, at Shapiro, our tagline is helping make the planet better together, right? Keeping trash out of the oceans, using our natural resources is your thing. If protecting the environment is your thing, if national security and defense with critical materials is your thing, right? The recycled materials industry touches all of that. And it does that every single day in ways that people don't have a clue what happens with their material once they're done using it, right? Or what happens to an airplane. I'm literally working on one right now where there's an airplane sitting in an airport over in Illinois, and we're working to see how we can recycle this thing. So people don't always understand the supply chains and the flows of material that we're using every day and what happens when they're finished. And the processes behind chopping it up, crushing it, melting it, making sure then that the chemistries on the metal are right, and then having that turn into your next product, whether that's the next airplane you sit on or the tin foil that you're using when you do your next barbecue, and being able to kind of be behind the scenes in that and see the processes, see the people who are touching it, that are melting it, that are making it. I just think that's really cool. And then you're driving down the road and you're like, oh, hey, that air conditioner, I've got the scrap there. This tin foil, right? I know some of Shapiro's metal is inside of this tin foil that I'm using at my barbecue. I find that to be so incredibly interesting. And then, again, from kind of the planet, the conservationalist side of me, it's like we're doing something that we all need, whether we know it or not. And if we weren't recycling, if we weren't taking care of the material that we've got, A, we'd run out of it. B, our cities would not look so pretty. C, our landfills would fill up even faster than they are now. We've got incredible resources in this world, and if we don't use them the right way and use them at their best and highest good for as long as possible, we're going to have issues, right? And all kinds of issues. So I think all those things, and then really that mission of what the people in this industry do is incredible.
Absolutely. Can you walk through one of those examples?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would love to hear, a story. Obviously nothing, DOD or ITAR related.
Yeah. No, so it is funny because we deal on the defense side, and I'll just say, we've got some very high security stuff.
Yeah.
That's always fun to think through the processes. But really, the process with us is, for the most part, manufacturers know that metal needs to be recycled. The question is it being recycled in an efficient way? So is everything mixed together, or is it separated out in a way that's going to, A, downstream be the most efficient way to process it, to melt it, least carbon intensive, right? Is it going to create the most value for the end user and then back to the manufacturer? So, are they keeping it separate? Are they doing the right things? But then the other part that we really like talking about is what are the other things that maybe aren't so obvious, right? Looking in the trash, looking in the compactors, what's in there that's actually recyclable? Like, if you go to many manufacturers, and there's some that are really, really good at trying to be zero landfill and trying to recycle material. But if you look at in the dumpster of many manufacturers across the United States, you're going to see cardboard in there, which is highly recyclable. You're going to see all kinds of different plastics, which, if kept separate, are very recyclable. We do all kinds of things with plastic too. So, for example, we've got a customer with HDPE plastic that's got like some metal attachments and stuff on it. So you might not think that it's recyclable, but there's actually a company here in St. Louis that will take that plastic and grind it up, get the metal out of it, and turn it into railroad ties. So instead of cutting down a tree and soaking it in poisonous creosote, and then not being recyclable and not having a thing to do with that railroad tie once it reaches the end of its life, I can take this plastic from this manufacturer that doesn't work for their product and turn it into something that's actually doing incredible good on the back end. So, that's really what the process looks like. It's process improvement for the product that manufacturers don't normally think of. And don't be mistaken, right? If you're a manufacturer and you're making air conditioning units, or you're making, aluminum, fly rod reels, right? If whatever you're doing, that's your product. But everything that's coming out the back door, everything that's leaving in a roll off, everything that's going to the landfill is a product. And oftentimes there's a ton of value in that, not only from the material, but this is the last thing I'll say on it, but the cost to get rid of it, the cost for the pickups, the light loads. If you're concerned about carbon emissions, right? If you've got a diesel burning trash truck coming to your facility multiple times a day, picking up a ton or two of trash, like there's much more efficient, much more cost effective ways to handle that as well. So that's what we love doing, is finding those problems and solving those, and just helping improve the process and make efficiencies for our manufacturers.
So that's awesome. Can you walk, because this is new to me too. So can you walk me through that? So is the first thing you go into the plant and then you identify what sort of the weak points are or how you can make those improvements to them?
Yeah, and at the end of the day, it's about asking really good questions, right? Like, why is this happening here? What do you think about this? Where are your pain points? Kind of that basic stuff. The more you can ask questions, the more you can find real opportunities. So, for example, we had a customer in the middle of the country, and they had a very specific type of aluminum alloy. Okay. And when it was kept separate, it was worth a significant amount of money. Let's just call it $1 million a year if they kept it separate. Okay. The problem is it was mixed with all kinds of other aluminum, and it was costing them, at least, again, a significant amount of money because it was all mixed. We went in there, we asked a ton of questions, and what we ended up finding out actually had nothing to do with material at all. We found out that the lowest paid, highest turnover person in that whole factory was the material handler on the forklift who had to dump the aluminum into the different buckets. He wasn't paid very much, but he didn't get a lot of love, a lot of attention. And so that position would just rotate over and over. So every week they're training a new guy, and oh yeah, the aluminum goes over there. Well, this guy basically had, we calculated it, $8,000 worth of value in every dump hopper that he tipped into a roll off. Because if one dump hopper was the incorrect aluminum type, and you can't look at aluminum and tell you, that whole roll off would basically cost him $8,000 worth of non-received value. So, we had a conversation with plant leadership, and it's like, hey, like it's not a metal thing, it's not an alloy thing, it's a personnel thing. And this guy, he's got a significant amount of money in his hands, and you got to make sure that you do the things to keep him, to make sure he's trained, to make sure that he's got a number two if he's out. And that guy that position ended up getting a raise. There was metrics put on him, and it became somebody who was not going to be super high turnover, right? Because of all the value that this position had. So it's really problem solving. It's being detectives. Again, looking for value in ways that, maybe you haven't considered before as a manufacturer. Because again, in that case, and they're building plane parts, like they care what Boeing's telling them. They care what Northrop Grumman's telling them, right? Like, the other product, the product that leaves the back door, isn't top of mind, and it can't be. So, how can you ask the questions to make the changes to really improve the bottom line for a customer?
That's an incredible story to hear. And really that comes down to treating your employees correctly and understanding what they're doing. And I feel like they take more pride in their work when they realize, like, hey, you have a lot in your hands and this is a very important task, versus, hey, just load up, grab that front loader and just start dumping stuff into that.
That's it, right? Like, and that goes back to what we were talking about, recycled materials versus just scrap, right? Like, so much of what we do too is training, right? We go in and we do lunch and learns, bring in the pizzas. I did one once. We did 3 shifts, and we needed a translator, and it was a great time. We were giving away gift cards for people that could answer the questions, right? But again, like it's empowering the employees who are touching and handling this stuff to realize, like, A, they're part of making the planet better together, right? They have a role in making sure stuff doesn't end up in the landfill, because it shouldn't. There's no reason for so much of the material that's in a landfill to be there. Yeah. And then letting them know, like, hey, what you're doing matters, and it actually has an effect on the bottom line, retaining employees, having enough people to do the jobs, not being so stretched thin. Like, hey, this might mean a several $100,000 more for the plant. Like, that gives you money for, more people to help with this or that, or it helps make your plant more profitable, more competitive against, other manufacturers. So yeah, I mean, it's really helping those people understand, like, hey, this is actually something important, and you do have a lot of agency in the decisions you make on how you're moving or processing material in a plant.
And absolutely, it's interesting because certain shops I'll go into I see it more often that they're trying to get as much coolant out of the chips as possible, right? They want to make sure that one, it's profitability, right? You want to get as much money as you can for your scrap, but I think more people are aware, and they're they're actually like, hey, I want to help out as much as I can.
Yeah, I've got a story about coolant. So we've got a product. It's a fluid recovery pump, and it takes the coolant out of the bin that the aluminum chips go into, filters it, puts it back in the CNC machine. But this has been a product that we've been working on for a while, and very early on, we had a demo in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Okay, so I'm in St. Louis, and so let me describe this product to you just so you can get a picture in your mind.
Yeah.
It's like a hard Pelican case type box. It's got two lights on the front of it and a big switch. And then inside, if you were to open it up, there's a timer, there's wires, and there's a big black pump that apparently X-ray machines can't see through. So, the first time we were going to demo one of these things, we're like, all right, let's see if we can get it up to Michigan, and I'm going to try and fly. I had a backup plan, like if the flight wasn't going to work out, I was going to hop in the car and just drive it. But, just as expected, when I went through TSA, the lights started going off, and it was, what is this? And so I opened up my bag, and I got a real funny picture of it. And here's this big box with the switch and a couple of lights, and they're like, can you open this up? And I do. And of course there's the wires and the timer, and in the pump, X-ray couldn't see through the pump. So they were like, what is this? And so anyway, I spent about 15 minutes, like, here's the website and here's what it is. And, we're looking up the pump online with the TSA people. And so eventually I made it through the TSA checkpoint. But when I do speeches, sometimes I include a picture of this thing, and you could tell why they were a little nervous. But anyway, the demo went great. The customer, thought it was a helpful product to save the fluid pumps. But we when you develop a new product like that, you learn a lot. So on my way back, I made sure before I went through TSA, hey, I've got something that looks a little funny in my bag. Do you want to see it before I put it through the scanner? And it was no big deal after that. So it's, it's all about continuous improvement and learning, David.
Yeah, absolutely. That's hilarious. I mean, not at the time, I bet, but
no, actually, it was even at the time, because we were talking. Me and my friends from work were like, "Do you think this is going to work out or not?" And so we were all kind of trying to place bets as to whether or not I'd actually get through the TSA or not. So that was it was all taken with like kind of an interesting approach.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, as far as the future, where do you see the future heading for recycled metals?
Yeah, and recycling in general, right? I think there's going to be a lot more concentration on zero landfill goals. And that doesn't necessarily mean take everything and bring it waste to energy, right? There's a place for waste to energy. We send a lot of material from our customers to waste to energy. But I think it's also more and more people are going to realize the inherent value of the material that's just going out the back door. I think as there's more legislation that has to do with the required amount of recycled content in products, as the OEMs want to be using more recycled product in their parts or products, like there's going to be added value in this material. And so whether it's done legislatively, you're going to have different targets that you have to hit, whether it's done just from the sustainability committee at large companies, or whether it's just done because, hey, at the end of the day, it's more profitable to recycle things than it is to pay to have it picked up and pay to landfill it. I think people are going to really catch on. And I think there's a huge opportunity right now for folks who are in the process improvement space to look at this and look at it in a different way than just say, oh, it's the scrap metal or it's the trash. I think additionally, this has traditionally been an industry where there hasn't been a lot of technology. Actually, I wrote a paper about this a year ago, and I think this is where it's all going to go. So if you think about right now, like the current manufacturing process, right? There's KPIs on everything. There's cameras on everything. There's lasers checking everything. AI is being integrated to check everything from the product standpoint. And I think, I won't say too much about it, but I think there's going to be a lot more of that type of scrutiny, and I say scrutiny in like the best possible way, that is already applied within manufacturing facilities, but looking at, again, the waste product that's coming out to make sure that it's being placed in the right spot, that it's being packaged in the right way, that the value that is inherent within that material is being fully taken advantage of. And so I think, manufacturers and recyclers alike are going to see a lot more technology come into the space where maybe, again, it's a real there's just not a lot of visibility there right now for manufacturers. So I think that's going to be a real opportunity for everybody as we move into the future.
That's awesome. Yeah, I can see, just like anything else, as technology gets a little bit cheaper after maybe the larger organizations implement it.
Mhm.
Every shop, there's no reason they can't have someone come in or send them a scanner, real quick scan, see how they can improve on efficiencies. And, I'm excited for that.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
I definitely know of Rima because of watching your stuff. So I think the more we get the message out, the yeah, the better our, I guess, world is going to be, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And just on the REMA thing, just for a second, like that was a stroke of genius from that group and the team that they used to make this change. So just even, think about it, on its face, right? It used to be the scrap was the word that we would use for the association, right? Scrap, scrap, scrap. And you've got a whole bunch of mental pictures when it comes to what scrap is. And it's kind of
Yeah.
like trash, but it's a little better than trash, and let's just get rid of it.
Mhm.
When you think about recycled materials, though, that's not starting with whatever's left over, your all fall from your punching machine or your turnings or your cardboard or your dunnage or whatever. It's what that stuff all turns into, right? So the Amazon box that you get, that is made with recycled materials, right? It's the product that you're using again that was recycled. So the product that you use, the product that you get, it is being made with this material. And so that was the real shift in the conversation now that we talk about it in the sense that it's recycled materials, because it's not just what it is when it comes off the machine or when you throw away your Amazon box and hopefully it's going to go, to a place where it can be recycled at a MRF, or maybe you put it in your recycle bin, but otherwise it's going to be in the landfill. It's wasted. What is that thing that it becomes once those atoms and those molecules are reused? And so I think that's one of the biggest messages from this whole industry is it's not what it is, it's what it can become and what you're going to use it for again. So yeah, I think that's been a huge opportunity for the entire industry just to change the conversation. And I know for us talking to our customers, that's been a real help as well.
That's awesome. It's a great point too, and I think it is a mindset shift, right? So awesome, Tim. I appreciate your time. For those of you watching, you'll see his link to everything, but watch his videos. It's phenomenal. It's very educational. They're entertaining and they're well produced. So Tim, thank you again for your time and the knowledge that you bring to the industry.
Hey, my pleasure. And then just before we go, I'm hoping to see you in person in October. You're speaking at an event. What's the name of that event?
That is the AME event in St. Louis, October 8th. So
Awesome.
yeah, I'll be speaking there.
Awesome.
I'm excited to see you in your city. So
yeah, I can't wait. Hopefully we'll get a few more Shapiro people there, but that sounds like that's going to be a great event too.
awesome. Thank you, Tim. Appreciate it.
Man. Catch you later.